The ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton sparkled with crystal chandeliers and golden accents, transformed into an elegant celebration space for my parents' 25th wedding anniversary. 200 guests filled the room: business associates, family friends, colleagues from Dad's medical practice, and extended family members who'd traveled from across the country to witness what Mom called a quarter-century of perfect partnership. I stood near the champagne table, wearing a simple navy dress that cost $40 from a department store clearance rack. Around me swirled a sea of designer gowns, custom suits, and jewelry that probably cost more than most people's cars. To everyone in this room, I was the anomaly, the youngest daughter who'd somehow failed to live up to the family's golden reputation. My parents, Dr. Richard and Patricia Morrison, were the picture of success. Dad, a renowned cardiologist, commanded respect wherever he went, while Mom had built a successful interior design firm that catered to the city's elite. Together they'd created what everyone called the perfect family. At least the parts of it they chose to display publicly. "Ladies and gentlemen," the master of ceremonies announced, his voice carrying across the crowded ballroom, "please welcome our hosts for this evening's celebration, Dr. Richard Morrison and his beautiful wife, Patricia." Applause erupted as my parents took the stage, both glowing with the confidence that came from decades of public admiration. Dad looked distinguished in his custom tuxedo, his silver hair perfectly styled, while Mom radiated elegance in a champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than some people's monthly salary. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Dad began, his voice carrying that authoritative tone that served him well in operating rooms. 25 years ago, Patricia and I promised to build a life together, and looking at this room full of friends and family, I think we've succeeded beyond our wildest dreams. More applause. I sipped my champagne and tried to blend into the background. "We've been blessed with so much," Mom added, her voice sweet but carrying an underlying steel that anyone who knew her well would recognize. "A thriving medical practice, a successful business, wonderful friends, and of course our children." The spotlight shifted to highlight different areas of the room as she spoke. "Our eldest son, Michael, just made partner at the most prestigious law firm in the city at only 35 years old." The light found my brother near the front of the room, where he stood with his wife and two perfectly dressed children, waving modestly as the crowd applauded. "Our daughter Sarah has just been promoted to senior vice president at Goldman Sachs, making her one of the youngest executives in the company's history." My sister, resplendent in a designer gown that probably cost more than some people's rent, smiled graciously as cameras flashed around her. Then the spotlight found me. The pause that followed was subtle but noticeable, the slight hesitation that happened every time my parents had to acknowledge my existence in public. I saw Dad glance at Mom, that quick look they exchanged when they had to figure out how to handle the family embarrassment. "And our youngest, Emma," Mom finally said, her voice taking on a completely different tone, sympathetic, almost pitying. "Well, Emma is our disappointment." The words hung in the air for a moment before the crowd erupted in laughter. Not cruel laughter exactly, but the kind of amused sympathy reserved for family members who just can't seem to get their act together. The spotlight lingered on me as I forced a smile and gave a small wave. "She's still trying to find herself," Dad added, making air quotes that generated another wave of chuckles. "Living in that tiny apartment, working on some kind of internet project that we honestly don't understand. But we keep hoping she'll figure it out eventually." More laughter, more sympathetic nods from the crowd. I maintained my smile and took another sip of champagne. What they didn't know, what nobody in this room knew except for my assistant and my lawyer, was that 3 hours ago, I'd closed the largest tech acquisition deal in the city's history. While my family was setting up for their anniversary party, I was finalizing the purchase of data flow systems for $1.2 billion, bringing my company's total valuation to $3.4 billion. The introduction continued with my parents sharing stories about their successful children and making gentle jokes about their work in progress. The crowd ate it up, offering supportive smiles and reassuring comments about how every family has one, and she'll find her way eventually. After the formal introductions, the evening settled into typical high society party rhythm. Conversations about stock portfolios, vacation homes, and whose children had gotten into which Ivy League schools. I floated through the crowd, largely ignored except for the occasional well-meaning aunt or family friend who felt compelled to offer unsolicited life advice. "Emma, dear," Mrs. Henderson from Dad's hospital board cornered me near the dessert table. Have you considered going back to school? Your parents mentioned you never finished your MBA. It's never too late to get proper credentials. That's very kind of you to suggest, I replied politely. What I didn't mention was that I'd left business school 3 years ago to focus full-time on building Quantum Solutions, the AI company that now employed over 2,800 people and had partnerships with 15 Fortune 500 companies. Uncle Robert joined the conversation, drink in hand and condescension in his voice. Emma, I've been talking to your father about your situation. I could probably get you an entry-level position at my real estate firm. Nothing fancy, maybe receptionist work or filing. But it would be steady income and benefits. I appreciate the offer, I said, wondering how he'd react if he knew that my company's quarterly revenue exceeded his firm's annual earnings by a factor of 20. The conversation was interrupted by my cousin Jennifer, fresh from her latest promotion at a marketing agency. Emma, still doing the computer thing? I keep telling my friends about my cousin who's trying to be an entrepreneur. It's so brave of you to keep trying even after all this time without success. I was saved from responding by the sound of a phone ringing. My phone specifically, the custom ringtone I'd set for important business calls. I glanced at the screen and felt my pulse quicken. Forbes magazine. The call I'd been expecting all week. Excuse me, I said to the group, I need to take this. I walked toward the quieter area near the coat check, answering on the fourth ring. Emma Morrison speaking. Ms. Morrison, this is David Chin from Forbes magazine. I'm calling to confirm the details for your interview tomorrow regarding your selection as our CEO of the year. I glanced around to make sure no one was within earshot. Yes, I can confirm. The interview is scheduled for 2 p.m. at my office. Excellent. We're very excited about the feature story. A 30-year-old woman building a $3.4 billion AI empire. It's exactly the kind of success story our readers love. The acquisition you announced today really puts an exclamation point on your achievements. I appreciate the recognition, I said, watching my family across the room as they continued their celebration, completely unaware that Forbes was currently on the phone with their disappointment. One quick question for the article. We'd like to include a quote about your family's reaction to your success. How have they responded to your achievements? I almost laughed out loud. Actually, my family doesn't know about the company yet. I've kept it completely separate from my personal life. Really? That's fascinating. May I ask why? Let's just say that success changes how people treat you, and I wanted to build something based on merit rather than family connections or expectations. That's a compelling angle. We'd love to explore that in tomorrow's interview. The self-made billionaire who built her empire in secret. Our readers will find that incredibly inspiring. I look forward to it, I said, ending the call just as my mother approached. Emma, who was that? She asked, her tone suggesting she was already preparing to be embarrassed by whatever my answer might be. Just a work call, Mom. Work? She looked confused. I thought you were still just experimenting with that internet thing. Before I could respond, she was already walking away, dismissing my work as easily as she'd dismissed everything else about my life for the past 3 years. I rejoined the party, moving through conversations about vacation homes I could buy with my quarterly dividends and charity galas I could fund entirely from my company's entertainment budget. The irony was almost overwhelming. Around 9 p.m., Dad called for attention again. The crowd gathered as he prepared to make another speech, this one clearly designed to cement the evening's theme of family success and achievement. I want to take a moment to talk about legacy, he began, his voice carrying that professorial tone he used when he wanted to sound particularly wise. Patricia and I have spent 25 years building not just a marriage but a family legacy. We've raised children who understand the value of hard work, education, and making something of themselves. He gestured toward Michael and Sarah, who beamed with pride. When I look at Michael's law career and Sarah's success on Wall Street, I see the fruits of our labor. I see young people who've taken the values we taught them and turned them into remarkable achievements. The crowd murmured approval. Of course, he continued, his tone shifting slightly, not every child finds their path immediately. Some take longer to discover their potential. Some need more time to understand that success requires more than just good intentions. Every eye in the room turned toward me. I felt the weight of 200 people's sympathetic stares, their polite smiles that said, Poor thing, still hasn't figured it out. But we never give up hope, Mom added, taking the microphone. Emma may not have found her calling yet, but we believe that eventually, with enough guidance and perhaps some realistic expectations about her limitations, she'll find a way to contribute meaningfully to society. The applause that followed was gentle, encouraging, the kind you give to someone running their first marathon, not expecting them to win but proud of them for trying. That's when my phone rang again. Same ringtone. Same important business call. This time, though, I was standing close enough to the microphone that the sound carried across the quiet room. I glanced at the screen. Forbes again. I'm sorry, I said to the crowd, but I really need to take this call. I answered the phone right there in front of everyone. Emma Morrison speaking. Ms. Morrison, this is David Chin from Forbes again. I'm terribly sorry to call during what I assume is evening hours, but we've just received some breaking news that affects tomorrow's story. Reuters is reporting that Quantum Solutions, your company, has just been confirmed as the largest AI acquisition in tech history. We'd like to get your comment for a breaking news story we're publishing tonight. The room had gone completely silent. 200 people were staring at me, trying to process what they were hearing. Yes, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. The Dataflow acquisition was finalized this afternoon. It brings our total company valuation to $3.4 billion. I heard someone gasp. Possibly several people. And you can confirm that you are the founder and CEO of Quantum Solutions? That's correct. I founded the company 3 years ago and have served as CEO since inception. The silence in the room was deafening. Excellent. We'll run the breaking news story tonight and feature you on tomorrow's cover as planned. CEO of the Year, the secret billionaire who built an AI empire. Thank you for your time. I ended the call and looked around the room. 200 faces stared back at me in complete shock. My mother's wine glass lay shattered on the floor where she'd dropped it, the champagne spreading across the marble tiles. Dad's face had gone completely white. Sarah's mouth was hanging open. Michael looked like he'd just witnessed a car accident. I'm sorry, I said into the microphone that was still live. Where were we? Something about realistic expectations and finding a way to contribute meaningfully to society. The crowd erupted. Not in laughter this time but in chaos. Conversations exploded across the room as people tried to process what they'd just heard. Cell phones appeared as guests frantically Googled my name and company. Mom finally found her voice. Emma, is this some kind of joke? No joke, Mom. Quantum Solutions specializes in AI-driven data analysis for Fortune 500 companies. We currently process over $50 billion in annual transactions and employ nearly 3,000 people. Oh, and we just acquired Dataflow Systems this afternoon for $1.2 billion. Dad stepped closer, his face a mixture of shock and something that might have been embarrassment. You're saying you own a billion-dollar company? $3.4 billion, actually. And yes, I own controlling interest. The room buzzed with energy as words spread. I watched my extended family frantically whispering among themselves, probably trying to figure out how they'd so completely misjudged the situation. Uncle Robert, who'd offered me a receptionist job 20 minutes earlier, appeared at my side. Emma, I had no idea. When did all this happen? I've been building it for 3 years. Since I left business school to focus on the company full-time. But the apartment, the clothes, the way we all thought. I live simply because I work 18-hour days. I dress modestly because I spend my time in boardrooms with Fortune 500 CEOs, not at social events. And I never mentioned the company because I wanted to build it based on merit, not family connections or social expectations. Sarah finally found her voice. Emma, why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us think you were struggling? I looked around the room, at the 200 people who'd spent the evening pitying me, at the family who'd introduced me as their disappointment, at the parents who'd just finished explaining my limitations to their guests. Would it have mattered? I asked. Would any of you have treated me differently if you'd known I had money? Or would you have just found new ways to diminish what I'd accomplished? No one answered that question. The Forbes interview runs tomorrow morning, I said finally. I'm sure you'll all be very interested to read it. I walked toward the exit, leaving behind 200 shocked faces and one very quiet anniversary party. Tomorrow they'd wake up to discover that their disappointment was on the cover of Forbes as CEO of the Year. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's letting them discover they were wrong all along.